We had the paintings for 7 years looking for the family that they belonged to. I'm Kay Nixon.
And I'm Rob Nixon.
And it's the story of two paintings that we found in my aunt's house when we cleaned out her house and she had moved on. The one painting she recognized right away and told me it was George White's. And the other one, I said, "Who is this, Aunt Flo?" And she said, "I have no idea."
We had one picture of Aunt Flo with the soldier of the painting, and it was dated 1945, and it had George White's was the name on the back of the photograph we had. And we tried to solve the mystery a number of times. One day, I was in Walmart here in Cobleskill, and I Googled George White's and SUNY at Cobleskill, and I got a hit on my cell phone that said he was a graduate of 1937. And I go, oh, that is good news. So we came directly to the college, and we met John in the alumni office.
I'm John Zacharek. I'm the Vice President for Development at SUNY Cobleskill, and I also serve as the Executive Director of the SUNY Cobleskill Foundation.
I'm Kate Weaver. I'm the assistant in the Advancement Office.
So I had the good fortune of meeting Rob and Kay Nixon. They came onto campus and wound up at my office and said, "We need some help." And I said we would be happy to.
We knew from this yearbook that he was from Pine Island originally. And so I just started searching there and any keywords, World War II. And I did get some military references that came up. I couldn't find anything really beyond that wartime about him. In our own database, we had a very old address for George. One thing that came up was a photo from our Centennial history publication that we had put together. And it was George standing in a field with some sacks of onions and a very brief caption about him that it was George White's, nicknamed Sauerkraut, and he was standing in the Pine Island region, which is famous for these black dirt onions. And I went back to that thought of Pine Island, and I said, well, maybe they have a historical society. Historical societies care deeply about making those type of connections. And I reached out by a Facebook message, hoping someone monitored the page. Literally overnight, I started hearing from these sleuth historians. I think there were 6 people probably that started emailing me back these bits and clips that they had found. But then there was the golden ticket. Someone somehow had determined that yes, he had come back from the war, he had married, and he had at least one son. The first phone number I had did not work, but from there I was able to get a collection of possible phone numbers, and I just started calling.
I was having a particularly bad day. I went to my car and I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. And usually I ignore them because I felt it was probably a telemarketer. But I was in the mood to argue with someone. And so it turned out to be a young lady's voice, and she said, "Are you Gary White?" And my first response was, "Well, why do you want to know?" And then she said, "Was your father's name George White?" The average telemarketer wouldn't know that. Seeing that painting was an emotional experience. For me, the words that Kevin Costner used in the movie Field of Dreams came to me, where he said, "That's my dad." I only saw him years later after he'd been beaten up by life. It's before I was even a glint in his eye.
Oh,
We were thrilled.
yeah.
We were thrilled.
Kate emailed me and she goes, "Oh, I got great news. We found the owner." And we kind of like, whoo, wow, relief. This is really going to come to a good end.
My dad had landed at Utah Beach on D-Day +5. It's not D-Day, it's after D-Day. I knew he was in the Quartermaster Corps, and he came ashore in France, and eventually he was in Belgium. As a kid, we used to play with his military uniforms. They were stored upstairs in our attic, and I recall that very much.
At that point, finding the owner for the one picture that we knew, it kind of gave us encouragement. We thought, okay, we actually found this person, and maybe we can find who the other picture belongs to, you know?
And my wife, just off the cuff, said, well, Gary, why don't you look at it? Maybe you would know who it was. And I said, well, that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, how the hell would I know who would be the other painting of? I mean, I don't know who it would be. She said, well, just take a look at it. And I did. And in the middle of Rob's sentence, I said, that's my dad. And Rob looked at me in disbelief because the paintings look a little different. One's a profile view more, they're in different uniforms. But I said, Rob, that's my dad. Both the Nixon family, Kate Weaver, John Zacharek from SUNY Cobleskill, went to such unbelievable effort to try to get this to us. I'm not used to dealing with people like this. They went through a gargantuan effort to try to locate the family, which is me, and get it to me. I feel that I've made a connection that's easily going to last the rest of my life between SUNY Cobleskill and the Nixon family.
Circumstances like that you can be a part of something like that don't come along very often.
When somebody passes and you go into a house to try to look through their belongings, to us it may look like junk. But you have to remember, to the person that died, everything in that house meant something to them.